indication that the people that are attending the webinar are actually, literally watching the webinar on their screen. So we borrowed from other programs that do CEUs, and at 3 points during the webinar, we will announce 3 separate code words or PIN words. And when you submit your individual agreement to Dan for the contact hour, just somewhere in that section 2, just write the 3 passwords down, and we'll track them on our end moving forward for each webinar. So just so you know, we have a full house right now. We have the full maximum 100 attendees, so it looks like we're not waiting for anybody. And just make a note somewhere that the first code word is Raleigh, R-A-L-E-I-G-H, Raleigh. I'm going to turn it over now to Mark from Sunrise Systems to walk us through the actual online filing process.
Okay. Good morning. Thanks, Chris. Just to make sure, I just want to make sure that everybody hears us here. What's going to happen today? All the attendees are in just listen mode, so you're not going to be able to speak directly to us, through the phone. But we'll take questions in your panel that came up for the webinar. In the lower right-hand section, there's a chat section. There you can type any questions that you might have. So, the first question I'm going to ask is to make sure that you can hear us correctly is if somebody can just respond that you can hear us, that'd be great. Just want to make sure. But as we go through, yep, thank you. Okay, so everybody can hear us. So as we go through today, what we'll try to do is if I can answer some questions as we're going through the demo, that'll be great. I'll try to do that. But most of the questions I'll probably handle towards the end. So again, as we go through this, there'll be times, that you'll have a question. I'll pause when I think, most people will have some questions. Type your questions in. We'll come into the queue, and then after, we go through, or I go through most of the demo here, what we'll do is we'll go question by question, and hopefully we can answer all your questions. So we have allotted an hour. There is, a lot to go through. I think we'll definitely get this done within the hour, depending on the questions. But, let's start. So, overall, this process, for the financial disclosure statement, I know last year there was an online system where people could go in, or what we call the LGOs, the local government officers, could go in and submit their financial disclosure statement. But, I guess there were some concerns, some problems. It wasn't the most intuitive system. So what we've tried to do this year is we've tried to, streamline the system to make it more consistent throughout, throughout everybody that has to actually file these financial disclosure statements. So what we're going to start with today is I'm going to use some acronyms or some terms just so everybody's clear as I'm using them. If I refer to LGS, that stands for Local Government Services, which is the DCA. If I talk about LGE, that's going to be mainly you, the municipal clerks. And if I talk about LGOs, that's going to be the local government officer. So as I use those terms as we go through today's demo, I just want to make sure everybody understands what those are. Working with the DCA, we're working currently to get everybody in the system, so you're going to be able to start utilizing the system. We don't have a definite start date of the system, but I believe we're talking about within the next week or two when this system is actually going to go live. So that information will be communicated from the DCA to you, along with your initial username and your password in order to access the system, along with the URL. This is a web-based system, so as long as you have a computer and internet access, you're going to be able to access, the system here. So the first thing I'm going to do is, once you get that URL and you navigate to the website, you're going to have a screen that's going to be very similar to what you see here on my screen, okay? And this screen is going to be the same whether you're an LGE, a local government entity, or you're the LGO, local government officer, accessing the system. What we're utilizing for usernames is going to be an email address. So, mainly the DCA should have all your email addresses or current email addresses. And again, that's how they're going to communicate what your password is and the URL and all that stuff. But once you get that information, when you come here, the first thing that we're going to ask you to do is log into the system. So I'm just going to kind of log in here as if you were logging in. And then put your password in. Now, you're going to be given initially a temporary password. And what we ask is that when you first get into the system, that one of the first things you do, it'd be nice if I type my username correct. Okay, let's try this one more time. There we go. So once you log into the system, one of the first things we're going to ask you to do, since you're going to be issued a temporary password, is to go in and actually change your password. And the way you would do that is right now we're on the home screen of the system. You'll see three icons right in the middle there. One says Manage LGO Roster, one says Report, and one says Edit Local Government Entity Profile. So what we would ask you to do is to go into this first option right here, the Edit Local Government Entity Profile. And this is where you can actually update your information for your organization. Now, there's going to be some information that you can change. There's going to be other information that you cannot change. But the main section will be down in the second section here, which is, again, the information where you can change your password. So in the password field here, okay, what you'll do is to change your temporary password is just clear out these fields. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll clear out those fields. And we ask you to enter in a new password following the guidelines that are listed below. So your password is going to need to be between 8 and 16 characters and contain at least one letter and one number in your password. So let me come in here and enter my new password. And then once you enter your new password in, what you'll do is you'll click on Save at the bottom of the screen here. And what will happen is you should get a message up in the top in green. Okay, let me just kind of highlight this right here. We'll do the pen. Right up here, okay, you should get a message in green that your update has been done successfully. If for some reason when you're doing this, it doesn't actually clear out, if you have an error, when you hit save, usually what you'll get is you'll get a message in red, okay, usually at the top of the green, up at the top of the screen, and it'll tell you what the problem is. There, I just took the 0 off my phone number, and you see that phone number is invalid, right? So again, any time there's an error. When you're, doing something in this screen and you click Save, what will happen is that it'll come up in red, but a successful message will always display in green. So again, that's the first thing that we ask you to do is change your password. Now, each municipality is going to be issued one username and one password to utilize the system, and mainly it's going to be issued to the municipal clerks in those municipalities. We do ask that you keep this username and password secure, so other people don't have it. But there could be times that you're going to have somebody within your organization that's going to maybe do this process, and you're going to have to share that information. We just ask again that you keep this information secure between the people who are actually doing this process. As we go into subsequent years, we do know that people do change within the organization. We could always come back here and we can update the information. So if the municipal clerk in this particular town changed, we can come back here later on in subsequent years and we can update this information. But starting this year, hopefully we have all the current information for each organization, and that information will be populated within the system. To go back out to my home screen, in the upper left-hand corner, there is a home link. Okay, so we'll click on that button there, and that'll take me back out to my home screen. And this is mainly where you're going to be working is off this home screen, and really mainly the Manage LGO Roster. That's where you're going to kind of be working. I do know from last year, and I'm going to use an analogy that Chris used at the Municipal Clerks Conference a couple of weeks ago, where I guess in the past with the old system with the rosters, you were creating your rosters at the end of the cycle, after everybody had filed their financial disclosure statements and basically given you the receipts that they filed and so on and so forth. With the new process, actually these rosters get created in the beginning, okay? So before the LGO can actually file their financial disclosure statement, you're going to have to put them on your roster first, and you're going to end up issuing them what we call a PIN number so they can actually register, okay? So that's what I'm going to kind of go through now. I'm going to show you that process right now. So from your side, this is probably going to be the most important step as we're going forward, is really just creating that LGO roster. So what I'm going to do is, before I click on Manage LGO Roster, what you'll see up at the top is you'll see the current submission year that we're in. So we're going to be in the 2014 year. You're going to see, how many rosters you have, one, and how many FDS submissions there are. So basically, there's one person on my roster right now, okay, and there's been 2 submissions, or for that particular roster. So let me go in and do Manage LGO Roster, okay. And basically what we're going to have here is you'll see that I added myself to the roster yesterday, but we're going to add a new LGO to our roster here, right? So what we'll see is right now I only have, well, it's one person, but there's two different positions within the town that I've created. As we go through this, you'll see how you can add, if you have a person that has to file, has multiple positions within the town, how you add those multiple positions. But to start this process, what we can do is we're going to click on the Add LGO button right here in the middle of the screen. And what that's going to do is that's going to bring up the screen so we can enter in this person's information. Okay? So we're going to start off up here, right? And what we'll do is we'll just put in their first name, their last name, middle name. Now, this is very important, this step right here, because when the LGO goes to register in the system, the information that they use to validate will be a PIN number, which the system is going to automatically generate for you, and we'll see that in a couple minutes. But they're also going to need to utilize their first name and their last name, okay, as verification. So there's three pieces of information to verify their identity. It's going to be their PIN number, their first name, and their last name. More importantly, I'd like to talk about the first name because whatever you put in as the first name, some people, I'll give you some examples. Some people might go by Mike, where you might put in Michael as the first name, or vice versa. You might put in Mike, they go by Michael, Joe, Joseph, Rob, Robert. Any of those things, you're going to have to make sure that you want to put in the information, most likely how they're going to use to identify it. My personal opinion would be to put in their full name. So they might go by Rob or Mike or Joe. My opinion would be to put in their full name. So Michael, Joseph, Robert, and so on and so forth. So it's their official name, their legal name. That's how I would put it in, and that's how they should go and enter it in. So, let's start off. Let's pick somebody here, and I'm just going to make up an arbitrary person here, right? So I'll pick, we'll just do Robert Smith, for example. Nope, Robert. Move over to the next field, Smith. Okay. You could put in a middle name. It's not a required field. Only the fields that have the red asterisk are required fields. So middle name is optional. You could put middle initial or the full middle name. That'll be up to you. For now, I'm just going to leave this blank. Okay. Once I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the Save button right here. Okay. And you'll notice that there's a PIN number that says NA right now. As soon as I hit Save, what will happen is the system is now going to generate an auto PIN. Okay. So you see now for Robert Smith, I have a PIN number that's been associated, which is 26901, okay? So that's going to be this person, Robert Smith's PIN number for your organization, for the town, and I'm working in here, Edison Township, for the township, Edison Township. Now, we do know that these local government officers might be associated or will have to file financial disclosure statements for other entities as well, too. Each entity will give their own PIN number, okay? So, for Edison Township, Robert Smith will have one PIN number for Edison Township. If Robert Smith is, let's say, a freeholder for Middlesex County, okay, the county of Middlesex will issue Robert Smith a separate PIN number for Middlesex County. But eventually, Robert will be able to take all his PIN numbers and put them into one account. He won't have to have multiple accounts in the system. He will utilize each PIN number to actually set up those multiple accounts within the system. So that's how we add Robert initially and get his PIN number. Then what we're going to do is move down to the next section, which is going to be where we add his various positions within Edison Township. Okay. So the first thing you would need to do is in the category drop-down is pick what category this falls into. And right now we've made it, just basically 4 categories. Is Robert an elected official? Is this an independent authority? Is he a managerial, executive member, or confidential employee within the organization, or other? And I know it says see instructions, and that kind of relates to more of what's in the directive instructions from the DCA. So right now, I'm just going to say for right now he's going to be let's see, Robert's going to be elected official. Let's say, okay. The border agency, okay, so what border agency within your organization does this fall into, right? So we're going to say that for right now this is going to fall into administration. I'll just type this. Okay, that's going to be your border agency. What is the position held, right? So I'm going to say he's the CFO, okay? And then the last thing we have here, and again, these are optional, but these are basically date of, his term. You don't have to enter them in. Elected Oh, sorry. Sorry. Nope. Okay, managerial. Good, thank you. Sorry. Okay. So we'll say he's managerial. Sorry, not elected, managerial. And then these effective dates, the to and the from dates here are basically for his term. And again, they're not required. But again, if you have the information readily available, you can enter it in. But again, you don't have to enter that in. So I'm going to now click on the Save button here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to save now Robert as the CFO. And what you'll see at the bottom of the screen here is list of positions held. You'll notice now that Robert has been added as the CFO, for this organization. If I want to continue to add more positions within the organization, all I have to come back up is to the next section, right? And I can come in here and I can enter in, the additional information and hit save and add as many positions that I need, within here. Okay. What we also do, something that we just added as well too, is we added a print function at the bottom here. This actually was a request from the Municipal Clerks Conference. Is after I'm entering all his positions in, can I just print this screen and hand this piece of paper to Robert with his information on his PIN number and how we entered his first and last name into the system? So we basically just added a print function here where you'll be able to click on print, okay? And what it will do is it'll come up with the print dialog box, and you just send it to whatever printer you want to print it to. Okay. Huh? Oh, you want me to print it for you, Chris? Okay, sure. Yep, sure. I'll print that out. Okay. So let's do this. Okay. Oh, okay. That gave me a little error in there. Let me go back here. Sorry about that. I think Chris's printer messed me up. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so we're back to Robert Smith, right? And let's go back out to home. Let's go back to my roster. Okay. So go back into Robert Smith here. Okay, so I'm back into Robert. Okay, so we have one position held. We just printed out his sheet with the information on that I can hand to Robert when I see him, that he'll actually be able to go and register. So again, once I'm done that, if I want to add another official within my organization, I can click on the Add New LGO up here at the top, right? So we can click on that. And basically what it would do is it would ask me for the next name of the next person, and I can go in and type that next person, and then I can continue to create my roster, right? So if I just do, let me see here, let's do Michael Williams, okay, no middle name. I'm going to click on Save. The system is going to generate, again, for Michael Williams, it's going to generate now a PIN number, a unique PIN number for Michael. Right, let me just write that down. Okay. I'm going to say position held, right? So I'm going to say, maybe other, and I'm going to say he's on the planning board, and he's just a member. No effective term or effective date I'm going to put in. I'm going to hit save. And then what's going to happen is now for Michael Williams, you'll see down below that he's been added as a position for the planning board. And again, I can print that out as well too. But as I create this roster, okay, I'll go back out to my home screen, and if I click on Manage LGO Roster, what we'll do is we'll see all the positions that I've added there, right? So we see Robert Smith, we just added. I was already in the system. We just added Michael Williams. So again, you can actually see your roster right from this screen. Now, as you create this roster, okay, this grid, or what we call this search grid, is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, okay? If you're a smaller town, you might have 30 or 40 people on your roster. If you're one of the larger cities or whatever, you might have several hundred people on the roster. So we give you the ability to actually search by last name, first name, or login ID, which is going to eventually be their email address, which will get updated once they register. So you'll notice in the search grid down below, for me, I do have my email address there as my login name. That's because I've already registered. Once that LGO registers in the system, additional information gets updated on your side. So let me just go into my account here real quick. Just show you the edit screen there. Okay. So what will happen is then what you'll get there is you'll see that I'm registered, and you'll have my email address and all that. So again, if you need to contact that person, you'll have what their current email address is, because that's how they registered with. So again, we do update that information within the system. The other thing that you'll be able to just view if you want to is if they have filed or not. Okay. So as they file within the system, basically what will happen is this status here will list that they filed. So the no's are for the new people that I just set up. Obviously they haven't filed yet, because we haven't registered them yet, but I've already filed my FDS, and you can see that as well too. Just so you're aware, once the FDSs are filed, there is going to be a public search site that the public can go to and actually review or view those FDSs. And as soon as they file, that information becomes immediately available for the public to view. So there is going to be no delay in actually being able to view that information. So I'm going to pause there for a quick second. I'm going to see what kind of questions we have here, if we have any here. Okay, I think we're nothing specific just yet. So let me continue here.
Clarify something.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I just want to clarify something. Mark has said it a number of times, referred to municipal clerks. The local government entity reps would also include representatives from the county office, a county college, et cetera, et cetera. So if you hear municipal clerk and you're somebody representing another entity, I mean, this is also for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, the majority of the people on the call today are municipal clerks, so that's why I refer to them. But yes, as Chris stated, any of the government entities that need to manage this or file this, could do this. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I have one question here. I think it says, will deputy clerks also have a sign-on also? I believe a sign-on also. No. Again, there's only going to be one sign-on per town or per entity. Okay, so you'll have to determine how you want to manage that. Right now, we haven't made any provisions to have multiple sign-ons for each entity. For right now, definitely for this year, we don't know going into subsequent years, but at least for this year, right now there'll just be one sign-on for for each entity.
But you can share your username and password internally with your deputy clerk and/or other office staff that you may designate to do this. In fact, if you're in a larger city that has several hundred LGOs, you might want to have one or two people log in at the same time and create the roster at the same time. Split up. You handle A through H, and then I'll handle I through Z, and speed it up a little bit that way. But it's sort of like a bank account. You have one username and one password, and you can share it whoever's in your household, your spouse or whoever. So it kind of operates that way.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go through. Let me just let me just clean up my question queue here real quick, just so I can make sure we answer all these questions in order how they come in. Since we're at a good point here. Okay. So the next question that came in is the category a required field? As of right now, yes, the category will be a required field. So anything with the red asterisk, if I go in here to add that LGO. Okay. Oh no, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let's go back. Sorry. Let's go edit. Yeah, it's going to be, even though it's not an asterisk, I believe you're going to have to pick something right now. We'll have to take a look at that and put the asterisk there, but I believe it is a required field. You're going to have to, pick something. What I would say is if it's not clear on what you pick, I would just default it to other. We do have the other in there. But again, this is, what we've worked with DCA in order to come up with these categories. So, it would be something that you should definitely enter into the field. Next question. So it says, okay, so one of the clerks has set up a list for the township and also the authority in the past. Will the authority now have to generate their own list? Now,
if you're talking about like a municipal utility authority or a local sewerage authority, that runs through your office. You're going to create a roster, and your roster is going to include that independent authority that falls under the, the local jurisdiction. And that would be the category independent authority in that drop-down menu under category.
Yeah, so you'll have independent authority.
Likewise for fire district. The fire district commissioners and anybody else that's an LGO at the fire district will be a part of your roster.
And should we say independent authorities would include the fire districts as well, too? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe we'll make that change and put maybe / fire district. I don't know if it's needed or not, but just leave it as independent authority, just so I know. Okay. So I hope that answered your question there. Next question is, how will the LGO sign into the system? I'm going to get to that in a minute, so just bear with me, and I'll kind of give you a run-through on what the LGO does, so in case you have to field any questions from your LGOs. So it says, we set up everyone's name, then give them an assigned number for each employee to file on their own. That's correct. Yeah. So once you set them up on your roster and the system generates a PIN number, you're going to give them that PIN number, and they're going to utilize that in order to set up themselves within the system as an LGO. And again, to the previous questions, I'm going to show you that process in a couple of minutes. Let me just go through these questions that we have here. It says, my mayor is both the mayor and a member of the county ethics board. How does he fill out this twice? I'm going to show you that in a couple seconds, but basically what he's going to do, as I mentioned earlier, he's going to get two PIN numbers. He will get a PIN number from your municipality, and then he'll also receive a separate PIN number from the county for the ethics board, okay? And basically once he sets up an account, what he'll do is he'll take both of those PIN numbers and he'll associate those PIN numbers, which are basically the positions, and he'll associate them within his account. Again, in a few minutes, I'm going to show you how the LGO sets up their account within the system. Okay, it says, I am the administrative assistant responsible for FDSs. Do I have to register as the clerk? Again, you're not going to be doing any registration. What we're going to be doing is the DCA will be sending you out the registration information for the username and the password. You'll just utilize that username and password that's assigned for the municipality. Again, we're not issuing multiple per municipality or entity. It's just one username and password for this year. You'll have to share it if somebody other than the clerk is, handling this job. It says the rosters have to be entered by the clerk before anybody can do their forms. Yes, correct. So as what's different that was in the past is rosters were created at the end of the process. Starting now with the new system, the rosters will be created up front. Now, we do realize that the first year will probably be the majority of the work creating your rosters. But what we're going to be doing in subsequent years is as we roll over the years, let's say from 2014 to 2015, those rosters are going to be copied over to next year. All you'll have to do next year will be just add anybody new to the roster or disable anybody that no longer applies that was on your roster from the year before. But those rosters will be copied over completely from year to year for you. So again, most of the heavy work or lifting is going to be done the first year. But once that's done, again, in subsequent years, it's really just going to be more maintenance of adding the new people or disabling the people who no longer apply within your organization.
And you'll be able also to add LGOs that might come on board after the filing deadline. So if you have a council vacancy that opens up and there's an appointment to the council or the committee in, say, like August or something, they have the 30 days to file their form. You'll be able to add that LGO, and that will then permit that person to file the financial disclosure statement within the 30 days.
Yep. Next question that came up is, as I create the roster and receive the PIN number for the LGO, should I print out the sheet and give it to the LGO, or can I email it? That's totally up to you how you want to communicate that information to your LGO, the PIN number to the LGO. We initially didn't have the print function up until a couple of days ago, so we've added the print function just to, so you can print out the sheet and hand it off to the LGO. If you want to email the information to your LGOs, that's fine as well too. It's however you want to communicate that information.
You're also going to have the ability to import a spreadsheet of your roster onto your hard drive. And although I've never personally done this, I'm told that those of you who know Excel pretty decent and Word pretty decent, you can set up an mail merge and send each of those names and pins uniquely to each of your LGOs using your spreadsheet. So you'll be able to do that. It hasn't been shown to me yet, but I'm told it's not that difficult. And we're going to print instructions and have that on the website for you as well, in case you want to try it out.
Okay. Will the emails be public? We're not putting the email on the FDS form, right? So I don't think they're public. The email address was not put on the FDS form.
The email address does not appear on the financial disclosure statement. However, if we get an OPRA request for the data or the documents that we have, we get into the OPRA part of this. So I would have to say at this point there should be an expectation that yes, they could potentially be public. I'd rather err on the side of suggesting that they could be public. That way, your local government officers and you as well, if you're using personal email addresses, you might want to shift those to a business email address. And looking at the GovConnect list of email addresses, it seems to be that the majority of clerks are in fact using business email addresses and not AOL or Gmail or anything like that. But that would be a personal decision, but I think it's fair to say you should err in favor of these potentially being available through Oprah.
Okay. Next question says, our finance officer, CFO, is also the tax collector. Do I have to set him up twice in the system? So if he's required to file an FDS for both positions, then yes, you will set him up for both positions. So as a CFO as one position, and then you could set him up as a tax collector for a second position. I apologize, I don't know all the different positions that have to file offhand, but again, you mean if they have to file, if you know that they have to file for that particular position, then yes. If it's one position, two positions, three positions, all the positions that they need to file for would need to be set up for your entity. Next question, personal email. Okay, so we talked about the emails already. I think Chris addressed the email situation. Here's a question for Chris, and he can respond. Is April 30th still the deadline?
No. As of right now, it's May 15th, and that's subject to change based on when the actual rollout date is to you guys for purposes of getting your rosters done, because you're going to need adequate time to log in and start, building your roster. So we'll base the final date on when that process starts. But right now, it's already been extended through May 15th.
Okay. Next question: do the effective term dates have to be filled in? No, that's not a required field. So you don't have to fill them in. If you have the information, great. I mean, it will be displayed on some of the other screens. But if you don't have it, it does not have to be filled in. Next question: once given a username and password by the DTA, is the clerk responsible for submitting the FDS? No, the submission of the FDS is going to be with the LGO. Okay, you just as the clerk would have to create the roster and give the PIN number to the LGO. But once you give that PIN number to the LGO, it's the LGO's responsibility to file the FDS, not the municipal clerk's responsibility. For our lawn engineering firms, I usually send out blanks, and they submit it for those they assign to our town. I don't usually know their names until they are submitted. What category would they fall under? For law and engineering firms. Would that be other probably, Chris, or?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. Is there a name?
Yeah, Jessica.
We'll find out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can. Yeah, we'll get back to you, Jessica, on that question. Chris is going to get some clarification on that. I'll jump to the next question then. When do we get to the point that people have to fill in their form? What happens if they do not have a borough email account? Do they use their personal account, and then that opens them up to Oprah? Correct. Do we have to issue borough emails to all? Okay. And when Chris comes back, he can respond to this a little bit more. So there's a couple different questions in here. One was talk about Oprah, which Chris already responded. For people, yes, most likely people will utilize their own personal email accounts. If somebody doesn't have an email address, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago at the Municipal Clerks Conference. There are several services out there that people can get free emails from. Gmail, Outlook.com, Yahoo. So an email address can be set up that way as well too, that they can just utilize for this process. If they feel that they don't want their personal email address out there. Or again, if the borough can set up a borough email address, again, I know some concerns came up that certain boroughs pay for each email box that they have to set up. Again, I would say go to the free email service, but if a borough has an email server that it doesn't cost them additional and it's not a lot of work to do that, then just set up that official with a borough email address. But you'll have to, figure what works best for your particular entity.
The lawyers and the engineers who qualify as a local government officer will be under the managerial executive category. I just asked Patty McNamara, the executive secretary of the local finance board, and she says that's the category that she generally sees on the filed FDSs.
Okay, good. Okay, next question. May the LGE edit the roster information, delete LGOs? Okay. If a LGO is put onto the roster and that LGO has not filed an FDS, then that LGO can actually be deleted off your roster. But once an FDS is filed, the only thing that the LGE can do is actually, let's say in subsequent years, if that person no longer holds a position that they have to file, what we would do is we would disable their account. Okay, so it basically is coming off your roster, or you would just disable them. So like I said, in subsequent years, we just disable them so they won't show as an active member on your particular roster. Okay, but once an FDS is filed, you cannot delete them, off of your roster at that point in time. Will it be possible to sort the list of positions in the system? Yes. So whenever you're on, let me go back here to the home screen here for a second. Whenever you're on the roster screen, or this, what we call this search grid, okay, all these column headings up at the top you can sort by just clicking on those headings. So the first click that you do will sort the column in ascending order. The second click that you will do will sort it in descending. So let's take, for example, right, if we look at the first name here, so I have Robert, Mark, Michael. If I click on that first name, you can see that the column was sorted in ascending order. If I click on it again, then it goes in descending order. And I could do that with any one of these columns, right? So I can come through here, and I can click on them, and it will sort it again. First click is ascending, second click is descending. So you can have that information like that as well, too. Let's see here. Different LGO positions require a PIN number, correct? Again, a different PIN number will be from different entities, okay? So if I hold multiple positions in my town, I'm only going to have one PIN number for that town or that one entity. But if I have two positions, one with entity A and one with entity B, I'm going to have two separate PIN numbers. Each organization that I'm associated with will have its own unique PIN number for myself once I'm created on their roster.
An example would be like a business administrator for a municipality who also serves as a commissioner on the Joint Insurance Fund. That BA is going to get a PIN number from the municipal clerk, and then at some point, somebody from the Joint Insurance Fund is going to give the business administrator a second PIN number. And at some point, Mark will show you how the LGO associates the PIN numbers to the account. It's actually very easy, but that's how that works. But internally, if you're on a planning board or you serve on an MUA or you're a councilman, you could have 3, 4, 5 different positions for the same entity. You will only have, as an LGO, one PIN number for that particular entity.
Yeah. Okay. Next question says, can employees share a borough email address? The answer is no. Okay. Again, each email address or account is going to be unique. Okay. If we're talking about from a LGO standpoint or whatever, again, we talked about from an LGE to access the system to create your rosters, you only be given one username and password for that. But if it's, you're setting up, or LGOs are going to register and they share an email address, and again, I don't know if that's the exact issue here, but every email address will have to be unique in the system, okay? Even if you're, let's say, a municipal clerk that's creating the rosters, that we have your email address, your borough email address, but let's say you're also have to file an FDS as well, too, for whatever. Maybe you hold a position within the town that you have to file an FDS. You're going to have to use a different email address for that filing as an LGO. You cannot use the same email address as your clerk's email address. So again, the email addresses can only be set up once in the system and be unique, and we'd have to go from there. So I think that might be the question. If not, you can just rephrase it and just make sure I got that right. Next question: is the LGO responsible to give the LGA a copy of the FDS? No. Okay. Once it's filed online. No more having to get a receipt and give the receipts back to the entity's responsible party. No, you won't have to do that.
If you elect, and it's up to you, but if you elect, you'll be able to actually download these FDSs in bulk. If you care to have copies of these on your hard drive, through the public search tool, there's an easy way to download 25 of these at a time into into bigger files, or you can download them separately. But that's completely up to you. I mean, one of the reasons that the director wanted to move forward on this project was so that you can point people who are requesting these at the front counter or through OPRA or what have you. You can point them to this website, and they can print out their own FDSs and do their own research. And I think we've made that really easy via the search tool.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you the search tool at the very end so everybody can kind of see here. So let me go through these last couple of questions, and then I'm going to move on to show you how we set up an LGO real quick. So let me just get through this. Next question, does the clerk initiate the first step in order to get the PIN for the LGO? Answer is yes. The LGO will create that by creating the roster. Will the official filing use the same PIN number in subsequent years? Yes, as long as they're with the same organization. So if they're still with, let's say, my municipality, I'm still with Edison Township next year, and my positions are the same, yes, I will continue to use that same PIN number. As of right now, we're continuing to utilize it. You won't even need the PIN number because your account would already be established within the system. The only time a new PIN number would be generated for an LGO is if they have a new position in an organization that they haven't registered for already. So, let's say next year I get a position with Middlesex County, and Middlesex County issued me a PIN. I will just take that PIN number, associate it with the account that I've already established the prior year, and now going forward, I don't have to worry about that PIN number anymore. Once that PIN number is used to register, then I don't really need that PIN number any further. Let's see, we have a separate fire district. Will they set up their own roster under the fire district? No, the clerks will be responsible for setting up the fire districts as well too. It says all clerks have to file an FDS, so we need 2 government emails for the purpose of this system. In a sense, yes. As a LGO that's filing, you're going to have to file under a different email address than the one that's going to be given that we're going to utilize from the DCA for you to get into the system. So yes, you will have to use a separate email address for that. And then right now we'll finish up this last question before we move on. It says, are you using the same email address that we have to submit last year for FDS? We created a special clerk email just for the FDS last year that is different from the clerk's. Which would you send it to?
The initial notification is going to be sent to the email addresses we have through the GovConnect program. After that, you can go into Edit Profile, and you can put the more appropriate email address as your username. If you want to use the one from last year, that's fine at that point. But at least initially, your notification from us that we're rolling this out, and here's your initial PIN to log in as an LGE rep, that's going to go to your GovConnect email address. And we've been stressing for the last couple of months in our communications to everybody, number one, to make sure that, your GovConnect info is current, and number two, to try to clean up your rosters a little bit. So if you have 400 LGOs, that's you probably have 50% more than you really need. So that was one of the things we've been trying to encourage everybody to do. And I also want to point out, for those of you who are also filing as a local government officer, in addition to being the rep, when you file your FDS, when you're setting up your account, it's up to you what username, what email address you use for your username. You can use a personal email address for your username. But again, I would caution you that although these are technically their usernames and not email addresses, we haven't crossed the OPRA bridge on this yet. So I would just err on the side of caution with the expectation that whatever email address you use as a username is at least potentially subject to OPRA. I'm not sure if that's how it would play out, but it's at least potentially subject to OPRA.
Okay. Okay, so real quick, I just logged back out of the system. I want to come to the login screen because I'm going to go in and register as a new LGO.
I'm going to give another code word.
Okay, so Chris is going to give another code word right now?
Yeah, before Mark moves on, I'm going to give you the second code word if you're going to be seeking the 1-hour credit contact hour. It's Boxer, B-O-X-E-R. Boxer, B-O-X-E-R. And we'll give you one more near the end of the session.
Okay, good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and register as a new LGO. I'm going to take my PIN number that was created with the roster, and I'm going to go in and set up a new account with that PIN number. But before I do that, I just want to show you, on the login screen, if at any point in time anybody forgets their password for the system, we do have a link out here on the login screen that says Forgot Password. If you click on that, and you put in your login email, okay, the email, most likely your entity's official email address, clerk's email address, or whatever, and click on Get Password, that email or that password will be emailed to that account, okay? As long as it's a valid account and valid email address on the system, that password will be emailed to you. Okay, so let's talk about LGO. I'll show you the quick run through on the LGO, how the LGO gets sets himself up or herself within the system. So on the login screen, we do have a link here that says New Registration, Local Government Officer. So your LGO will click on that link. Okay, they're going to now validate their information. So basically, what they're going to do is they're going to come in here and they're going to put in, they're going to type in their information the way you gave it to them. So their first name, their last name, and then they're going to put in their PIN number, right? So 26901. 26901. That was my PIN number. I'm going to click on Validate PIN. Okay, and if that PIN number is successful, or everything matches up, the first name, the last name, and the PIN number, we'll get a message up in top in green that says, given PIN number has been validated successfully, please continue with the registration. Now they can come in here and they can put in their additional information. Okay, so they'll fill in their address information. Let's go back here. Okay. Now this is where they're going to utilize a unique email address. So let me do this. Okay, so this will be a unique email address that they'll use. We're going to ask them to confirm this. And they're going to create a password for themselves as well too, because they'll be able to come in here and access the system. Okay. So again, what we'll do is we'll enter all that information in. There's going to be terms and conditions down below that we're going to ask them to scroll through and read. And then after they're done, they'll click on the I read the terms and conditions and I agree. Click on Register. And now what's going to happen is it's going to tell them that you've been successfully registered in the system. Please store your username and your password. They can actually print that out or do whatever they want. But once they've done that, once they've registered in the system, okay, then what we could do is we can come here, right, and we could log into the system. So I'm going to log in with my email address that I just provided. And now once I log in into LGO, okay, what I'm going to be presented with is a screen kind of similar to, a little bit different than what you saw, different icons. I mean, they have the edit profile icon, which they can go in and update their password or their information. You know, they can come in here and they can update their information. But basically what they want to do is they can look at all their positions, right? So manage positions will list all their different positions. And again, if I was a person who had multiple positions with multiple entities, and I have another PIN number from another, let's say from Middlesex County, right? I'm a freeholder from Middlesex County, and I got a PIN number from Middlesex County. What I would do is put my name back in here and the PIN number from Middlesex County. I would validate that information, okay? And once I validate it, then that position from Middlesex County will be listed below. So they don't have to register all their PIN numbers at the same exact time. As they get their PIN numbers, they can come back in here and register them as they get them. So, you know, if I was issued my first PIN number from Edison Township today, and it was 3 weeks from now that I get the Middlesex one, I could start my FDS, you know, right now for Edison Township, and then in 3 weeks when I get my one from Middlesex County, then I can do that one as well too.
A good example would be a law firm, a lawyer or an engineer that represents like 7 or 8 different towns. That, you know, that person's going to get 7 or 8 different PIN numbers. Once they take that very first PIN and create their account, it's simply a matter of adding those PINs through that managed position process, and the system will from that point forward know that attorney or engineer is associated with all of those multiple entities, and they will appear in the FDS once that person's ready to start completing it. And just as a side note, it's also possible, although I think it's easier for an LGO to just wait to get all the PINs, but I know there's going to be LGOs who go ahead and submit their FDS, and then 2 weeks later they get another PIN from another entity that they might be a part of. That's fine. What will happen is although that FDS is now online and available to be searched, once that LGO associates the new PIN number, it'll then give that LGO the ability to file a second FDS, noting the updated information, which in this case would be the new entity.
Now, the big advantage to the system this year, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong from what I know from last year, is that once the first FDS is filed within the system, we retain that information. So when they go to file their second FDS with a second entity, they don't have to retype all the information all over again. The information is going to be stored. All they would need to do is, if the information is exactly the same, they're basically just going to go through all the screens just to verify it, and then at the end submit it. But if something happens to change within a couple of, let's say within a month or something changed or whatever, they can actually update that information. But the information from the previous FDS will be there. They won't have to retype all the information all over again.
And that's true year to year as well.
Yeah.
That was one of the big complaints we got last year, that you weren't able to save your information on the Adobe form, and you weren't able to save it either just for last year or from year to year. This gives LGOs the ability to spend a little bit of time, put all their information up front, and then that information is there prospectively.
Yeah. So let me go in. I'm going to just go file an FDS real quick, right? So I'm going to click on File Financial Disclosure Statement, right? And some of the information will be pre-populated here, okay, so they can fill it in. Again, they can go through the screen or whatever, and I can enter my information. So I'm just going to kind of run through here and enter some information in here real quick. Okay, you'll see the position that I'm listed down below, so this is what I'm filing for. Again, if they had registered, or if they had the multiple PINs from the different agencies and they were all registered at the same time, we would see all the different positions that they have listed down below here, right? So it could be more than one position that they're filing for at a time. It's not on each individual position. They don't have to file for each individual position. They would file for anything that's currently hasn't been filed that they've actually associated with their account at that point in time. So let me click on Next. Okay. Now, what we've done is we've made some stuff kind of mandatory, where either in this section, financial information, they're going to either have to enter source of income, or they're going to have to click on None if it doesn't apply. Okay. So it's not going to let them go through these screens without at least entering the information in or clicking on None. Okay. So what I'll just do here is I'll just say source of income. Right, I'll just put something in. Right, and I'll just say that's myself. I'll hit Save. So we've added that information here. I'll click on Next. And these I'm just going to kind of go through and hit None. Now, at any point in time, one of the questions that might come up is from the LGO is, well, if I started this form, okay, do I have to go through the complete? What happens if I come up to a section and I'm not sure, I don't have that information with me right then and there? Do I have to finish it all the way and submit it, or can I come back to it? They can come back to it and complete it. Until they actually physically submit at the end and send that form through, they can always come back and edit this form and add additional information and so on and so forth. So they don't have to finish it. As long as they're clicking on Save and they're hitting Save as they go through this process, that information will be saved. So, and at any point in time, they can also preview the form. So if they can click on the Preview FDS form, they can actually take a snapshot and see where they're at and preview the information that's already been entered in here. Okay, so that's their form. So let me just kind of go through. I'm just going to click on None on most of these here. But again, they can fill in each one of these sections.
If you had multiple responses, you hit Save and then you go back.
Sure. Okay. So let's take here. So one of the things Chris asked me to show you is, let's say here. Let me go down here. I'll say I have property in Edison, right? So I'll say 105, and my ownership is 50%. Okay. So here's something that came up. So here's a house that me and my wife own, right? And we both own 50%. It's 50-50, right? So what I'll do is I'm going to say, okay, I own 50% of the house, right, myself. I'll hit Save. And then what I'll do is I'll come here, I'll pick Edison again, and I'll say my wife owns 50% of the house. So 105, and I'll say 50% ownership, and hit Spouse, and then hit Save. So I can add multiple items here if I just enter the information. Once I hit Save, it then puts it down at the bottom. And as you can see, from my property here, 50% both for myself and my spouse.
And that's true in all the sections, so that if the LGO has multiple sources of income to report, either individually or through a spouse or dependent, it's simply a matter of typing it in, hitting save, and then typing it, going right back to the top there, typing the second source save, third source save, and it keeps building on the bottom on the list, and then that keeps getting imported into the FDS. So if you keep doing the FDS preview, you'll see each item gets added at a time, and that's for people that have multiple sources of information that they have to complete.
Correct. And you'll notice that once we add information in any section here, the none box up at the top now becomes grayed out. They can't click on the none box. They would physically have to delete these entities first, or these items first, so there's nothing listed in this section, and then that none box would become enabled. Okay, let's go to the last section here. Again, if they want to enter any comments in relating to their FDS, they can put this in. Let's see if this is test, FDS. All right, we'll click on next. And now the last screen is where they actually will do their submission. Okay, so what you'll notice at the bottom of the screen here is there's a button that says Submit Financial Disclosure. Right now that's grayed out. Okay, they cannot submit this until two things are done on this screen. The first thing is that we're going to force them to view their FDS. So actually, it's the same thing as kind of clicking on the print preview, but we're forcing them here to actually preview the FDS first. Okay, and then we're also having them sign or type their name here, which is going to be basically their electronic signature for this form. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on Review Financial Disclosure Statement. Right, I'm going to review my form. Right. And you'll notice here that the date in this section, the date and the name are blank because we haven't submitted it yet. Now what I'll be able to do is type my name in here, right? So I'll put in my name, right? This is going to be my electronic signature. And now my Submit button down at the bottom is now enabled. And at this point in time, I can click on Submit Financial Disclosure. They will get a warning that once this FDS is submitted, no changes can be made to this FDS, okay? So it's important that they know that, obviously that once they submit this, they cannot make any changes to the FDS, okay? We'll hit OK. I'm going to submit this. And now what they're going to get is they're going to get a confirmation. They should get something in green that says their FDS has been submitted successfully. They get an ID number and a date and time that it's been actually submitted, okay? And for them, they're done. Yep. If I go to View FDS here now at the bottom, then we'll have the date and we'll have their name listed in the FDS. Okay?
And they can print that from this screen. They can save it to their hard drive.
Yep.
They can do,
And they can come back at any point in time. They can come back in later and view this and print it and so on. They don't have to do it right then and there, okay? If I go back out to my home screen, you'll notice that the financial disclosure, I can't click on that now because my FDS has been filed, okay? If I go to my managed positions, again, I only had the one position, but let's say now I got my new PIN number. Well, I can come in here, add my new PIN number. Once I add that new PIN number, because that position wasn't filed yet, now the FDS will now become enabled for that new position. Now I would go in and file my new position that I just added to the system and be able to file as well.
And let's make sure we understand, we're talking about a new entity, not a position within your entity.
Correct.
That would only apply if I got a PIN from like a JIF or a county or whatever. But if, let's say I submit my financial disclosure statement today, and then, I don't know, like in 2 days, somebody says, oh, I forgot that he's also on the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
There's not going to be a new PIN issued for that because it's the same entity. It's only for a separate entity would they be able to then submit, add another PIN number and submit another financial disclosure statement. So we're putting the burden where it belongs on the local government officers to do this right, to do it right the first time, and realize that come August, if you forgot that what I said at the municipal clerks conference a couple weeks ago is if I forgot to put the Long Beach Island house on my FDS, and I've already submitted my financial disclosure statement, well, I'm sort of SOL at that point because I've already submitted. That's the kind of thing that we have to hold local government officers to a certain standard of doing this right. It's not a very complicated form. I can assure you the state ethics form is a lot more complicated and a lot more intrusive than this two-page form. And I think most LGOs have done this correctly over the years. It's just a matter now of doing it electronically.
Correct. Yeah. So again, so what we'll also see is we'll see status up here, FDS submissions that's submitted. Okay, so I see what my status currently is. So at any point in time, I can now log out and I'm done, because I filed this, this FDS. Now I wanted to show you real quick before I answer some questions. I'm going to go over, again, this is an example. We're working in our test system, but this is going to be the public, the public site where people can go and actually search if FDSs have, been submitted and view them and so on and so forth. So if I come here, I can search by either the local government entity if I wanted to see everybody, let's say for Edison, right? So I can come here and type in Edison. I could do a search. What I would do is I would see everybody that's filed for Edison, right? So I see Robert Smith, myself, we all filed. I could do a search by last name, right? So if I was looking just for a specific person and I type in Smith, okay, I can pull up anybody whose last name ends in Smith, or even the first name as well too, right? So we have 3 Smiths that come up, right? So Robert was one of them that came up. Let me go back. I'm going to do the Edison Township because I just want to show you one thing, what the public will be able to do. So let's search Edison. So once this list comes up, let's say I want to review Robert Smith's FDS. All I need to do is just click on the View button, okay? And then we'll come in here, and that person will actually be able to view that FDS for Robert Smith. If I want to download everybody's for the town of Edison, what I can do is I can click on the check boxes on the left-hand side. I can put in this little, what we call CAPTCHA down at the bottom here. And once I put in that information, then I'll have the ability to actually download all those FDSs for everybody that's filed. So right here, here's I have for myself, and then I also have for Robert, so I can actually download them all right from the website. And the thing that's going to be available is, like, once that FDS is filed, immediately it's going to be available to the public to search and pull up. Okay, so there's no, I know last year there was a delay in getting them up, so once they were filed, there was some type of delay getting them up onto the public site. This is instantaneous. So once those are filed, again, they'll be immediately available for public viewing.
And one thing I want to mention is, as a second part of this project, once we're rolled out and the LGOs are filing their FDSs, we're working with the vendor to add to the public search tool the ability for them to also search the rosters, because that's the only way anybody will actually know who's supposed to file. They need they need to have the roster so they can compare it to the forms that are available in the search. That's the second part of this. It's not going to be immediately available, but that's going to be up there sooner or later.
Correct. Yeah.
And I want to give you the last password, code word. It's perch, like the fish. P-E-R-C-H. Perch. P-E-R-C-H.
So the last thing before I get to the questions I just wanted to show you is I logged back in as the as yourself as the clerk of the local government entity, and I just wanted to show you that when I went into logged into this system and I went to manage LGO roster, again, not that you're responsible to make sure that the LGOs file, but if you're curious of who filed off your roster or not, as soon as they file, okay, this roster gets updated and it will show you that FDS has been filed. That will change from a no to a yes. Okay, so at any point in time, you can actually come in here and you can actually, you can take a look to see, who's filed and so on and so forth. So, just wanted to, show you that information. Again, if you have to add a new LGO, let's say mid-year, okay, somebody's assigned, somebody resigned from the planning board and a new member is now added to the planning board and they have to file within 30 days, I believe, right? You would just come into the system, you would add them as a new LGO, give them their PIN number, and just direct them to the site that they need to go to, and they would just, same thing we did. They would create an account, assign their, associate their PIN number to their account, and then file their FDS online. So again, we're hoping, that this is, like I said, a lot easier than what has happened in the past. Obviously, this is the first version of the system, so, as, everybody goes through it, we're going to get some feedback. We're going to improve on it and, make it better and hopefully easier. But I think, from what I've heard from, talking to some of the clerks, nobody liked last year's system. Okay, so hopefully this is definitely somewhat better and, hopefully more intuitive. So that being said, let's get to some of the questions here. So we have a whole list here. So it says, is Government Records Council on board with the clerk sending OPRA request to the state site instead of filing the request locally? Is Government Records Council on board with clerks sending OPRA request to the state site instead of filing the request locally?
We have not consulted with the Government Records Council, but we have an opinion from our Attorney General that's assigned, our Deputy Attorney General that's assigned to us, that you comply by referring them to the site for a search.
Yeah.
Because you're not maintaining them anymore. You don't have paper copies to give them anymore. They're on the website.
Yeah. So you would just refer them to the website.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say that if you elect to put them on your computer at some point in the process, that if you download them and you're maintaining a copy, you might put yourself in the position of having to respond to the OPRA request under at least the common law aspect of what constitutes a government record.
Okay. Okay, next question says, will you be providing printed instructions for us to give to the LGOs? Yes. We've been making some last-minute changes to the system. What we're going to be doing is we will have printed instructions. We're also going to be, I'll actually be creating a short video tutorial for the LGOs as well, too. There'll be a spot where they can click on a link to run that tutorial and go through it, and we're hoping that's going to be done maybe by the end of this week, if not early next week. So by the time you're on the system, or by the time the system goes live, that will be available for them to actually go through. Like I said, we are working on some last-minute changes first before we, create anything. But yes, that will be available as well too. It says one of our employees is a shared server, same position for 2 towns, part-time at both, making her full-time. Will she need to file with both towns, or only the host municipality?
The person that asked that question, can you respond to this question? Is that person issued 2 separate W-2s, or does that person only receive a single W-2 from one of the towns?
Okay, so we'll come back. We'll circle back to that. The next question: do you have a time frame to when the system will be ready to use? Within the next couple of weeks. We don't have a definite go-live date yet. We're still working out some additional changes to the system, but I think we're looking probably within the next 2 weeks at the latest. At the latest right now. It says, can you please give an example of what you are explaining, such as engineer who is appointed in multiple municipalities, how they would register once and then file multiple times? Okay, so what would happen is that engineering firm or engineer would actually be on, let's say they're the engineering firm for 5 municipalities, okay? Ultimately, they're going to be issued 5 different PIN numbers, okay? So each municipality is going to list them on their roster, okay?
But you only care about your roster.
Yes.
You only care about that single PIN number that you have to give to that engineer. You don't have to worry about the other 4 towns.
Correct. Yep. So it's up to the engineering firm to get those 5 PIN numbers from the various towns, that he or the firm is actually working in. So they'll have to make sure that they get the various PIN numbers from each entity that they work with.
And then the engineer takes one of those pins, goes on and registers as an LGO, and then adds the other pins through that Manage Positions tab, and now that engineer is associated with all 5 towns. And they can do this either before they submit their FDS, or they can add the pin numbers after they've already submitted an FDS. The system will just keep adding that other entity for each pin number.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it says, what happens if someone has filed an FDS form and gets appointed during a year to another position? Well, at that point in time, if it's the same entity that they're working in, so let's say, again, I mentioned earlier, I filed an FDS for Edison Township as the CFO today. 6 months from now, I get a position on the planning board, right? At that point in time, that new position is going to be added to the roster. They don't have to submit for that entity, right, because they're in the same entity. But if they are now with a new entity, they would have to file. Okay. So Chris said if it's the same entity, they don't have to file, but you would just add them to the roster. Next question. Okay, when you enter a second position with the same entity after the FDS is submitted, i.e. deputy manager and CFO, does another FDS have to be submitted? It's the same similar question. Yes, no. Will the LGE get email notice when LGO is filed? As of this time, no. You can log into the system and look at your roster to see who has filed, but no email confirmation is being sent back to the, let's say, the clerk at this point in time. I know it has been, some email has been talked about, but that hasn't been finalized. So as of right now, no emails are kind of going back and forth right now. It says clerk office no longer needs a copy of the FDS on file. Just want to make sure, right? Correct. Clerk's office does not have to have an FDS on file. The clerk's office, for whatever reason, should direct the public or anybody out to the public search site, and they can actually go out there and view or print or do whatever, for any FDSs as well too. It says, what if an LGO is given a new position within the same municipality later in the year after they filed? Again, I think we've answered that question a couple of times already. They don't have to refile. It says, oh, I did not hear the second word. Okay, I'll get back to you on that. We'll send that over. We have an elected official who does not use a computer and has no email address. How do you advise this official regarding filing his FDS?
You're going to give him the same username and PIN number that you're giving all the LGOs. And that'll have the information for that person to file online, and it's up to that person to make a decision to either not file or follow the instructions and file it correctly. And that LGO does so. If that LGO chooses to not file electronically, he or she does so at her own risk.
Yeah.
There's no paper substitute.
From an email, as I mentioned earlier, there's several services out there that LGO can get a free email from, and as we all know, that LGO, should maybe ask somebody for help, whether it's a child, a grandchild, a friend, or whatever. They should have somebody that's available to them to help them through and file this and set this up. So again, there are options out there. It says once the LGO files, the system automatically updates to say yes, that the officer has filed. That's correct. So immediately. So once the LGO has filed for the position for your entity, yes, this roster will be updated immediately, instantaneous. We have an elected official who does not have a computer or no email address. How do they file? I think we just answered that question. To circle back to the first question about the shared service position, they only get one W-2.
Okay. That's a good question. Ask that person to email us.
Okay. Okay. Yes, I know that question was from Stephanie. So if you can, Stephanie, if you could just respond what town you're with, Chris or somebody will get back to you on your answer for that on the shared service thing. Okay. What is the web address for the LGE, and is it the same for the LGO? Yes, it will be the login. Yes, the URL will be the same web address. Right now we're working in the test system, so do not take the information that's on my screen. This is only the test system. Once the system goes live, the correct web address and URL will be communicated to everybody. We are working with, or the CCA is working, with the state OIT right now to come up with hopefully an easy, common URL, something like FDS@NJ or state.nj.gov or something like that. But it hasn't been determined or established just yet. We should have that again within the next few days or so. Let's go here. Stephanie respond back? Hold on one second. Yeah, Lumberton Township. Thanks, Stephanie. Let me go through these other two here. The shared service. Okay, Stephanie. Okay, what is the public site? Again, that's not been established yet. So once we do that, it'll be communicated to you.
We're working on getting a separate domain for it, so it's nice and easy. And will be constant from year to year. So there's been like a 1 or 2 day delay in finalizing that with the state OIT office.
It says once the LGE, it says files, are there any additional steps that LGOs need to do? The LGE isn't filing. The LGE is creating the roster. The LGO will file, but once the LGO files and they got a confirmation that they filed, no, there's no additional steps that they need to do unless they get another PIN number and they need to associate that other PIN number to their account and file an FDS with the new PIN number.
We know from history and from experience that many of you will want to reach out to your local government officers when you see that they haven't filed and the deadline is coming up, and it's real easy for you now to see who's filed and who hasn't. It's up to you if you want to give them like a little, a little courtesy notice, but the burden is not on you to do that. The burden is on the local government officers to file a financial disclosure statement. We're just asking that you communicate the PIN and username and build the roster. After that, it's really up to them. They're the ones that are subject to any sort of ethics complaint or any public embarrassment for not filing. I've said before that two of the common groups of people that look for these things are gadflies and newspapers, and a third group would be political adversaries. So it's up to the local government officer to decide whether they want to risk not filing at all or filing incomplete forms.
Okay. We've got a couple more questions here. Okay, so let's see here. We got that one taken care of. Okay, it says, I missed how to apply for the CEUs. You said talk to Dan Kaminsky? Or?
So what we did is we sent out a GovConnect notice this morning with the instructions, and basically you're going to use the, there's a form that we have, it's called an individual credit form or something like that. The name escapes me, but it's the same form that you would use if you took a webinar or training somewhere and it hadn't already been approved for credits, but you were seeking credits. You're going to use that form and you're going to fill it out. But what you're going to add to the form is the 3 code words that we communicated this morning. That's how we know that you sat here for the duration of the presentation, and that'll get you your hour. You're going to send the form like you normally would to the certification unit, but when you print the form off our website, it has all those instructions.
Good. Okay, 2 more questions here. It says, once the LGO files, are there any additional steps the LGE needs to do? No. No. So once they file this, once you give them their PIN number and information, you're pretty much done. The only thing the LGE really has to do would be if that LGO gets a new position sometime after the fact, is just add that new position to their roster. That's really all the LG would have to do. And then last question I have here from this is from Woodbridge. It says, I have 45 fire commissioners amongst 9 fire districts. I don't know everyone's name. Do I need to have all 45 names, or as an alternative, can I set them up as Fire Commissioner 1, Fire Commissioner 2, and so on for each district? No, you would have to have their John, you would have to have their names because, again, their name is going to be what's associated, right? So it's going to be, Robert Smith and their PIN number, right? They're going to need that physical name. So somehow you're going to have to, unfortunately, obtain their names in order to set them up, right, Chris? Yeah. So let's see here. I have an email at the clerk. Do I understand that I need a different email when I file? Yes. The email that for the clerk will be the email address most likely we're going to use as your LGE login information, but since you're going to need to file as an LGO as well too, you would need a different email address in order to do that. Let's see. And the last question here, that's up to you, Chris. It says, please repeat all passwords. That's not so
whoever that was, Captain. Whoever's asking that question, call me, 609-633-3610. Just give me 15 minutes before you dial.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Do we need to include their name and their email address to register? No. If you're an LGE, when you're setting up a person in the system, there is no email field for you to enter in. The system will automatically update your roster with their email address once they register, once the LGO registers. Will you automatically update your roster with the email address that they registered with, but you do not have to enter there is actually no field for you to enter their email address in when you're creating your roster. But we will, in a sense, as a courtesy, whatever, give you their email address once they register. You'll see that in your roster. So I hope that answered that question. So that's pretty much all the questions that we have. I know we ran over. There were a lot of questions. This was actually probably the biggest session that we're running with the most people, so that we did have a lot more questions. I will let you know that we have also recorded this webinar. At some point in time, hopefully within the next week, we're going to have this somewhere where people can actually go back and go through the webinar as well too, if they want to listen to it again or view it again. So Not sure yet where that will be, but that will be communicated to everybody as well too. So again, we will have the recording somewhere out there for everybody to to listen to. There are additional webinars that we're running, so if there's anybody else within your organization that needs to participate or is going to be responsible for this, there are 7 more webinars that are being run. Through the rest. There's 5 more this week, and there's some throughout the next couple of weeks. I think the schedule was sent out to everybody. So again, if you have other people who need to register, send it out. And then just real quick, Chris, Angela or Alberto asked if you can repeat your phone number that he can call you again. He didn't catch it.
609-633-3610. Just call. Just call later on. Don't call right away because we're still. Once we hang up, Mark and I still have some business we have to go over.
Yeah. So okay, good. And you got Stephanie's information from Lumberton, right? Yeah. You'll contact her on her questions. Okay. So again, I will just wait another minute or so if there's any last-minute questions, if anybody has any questions. If not, it says, I can retake the training webinar. Yes, you can retake it. So just sign in for one of the other sessions. The only thing is I would ask that you sign in for one of the later sessions, since the first couple of sessions are probably the most people that have signed up for. So if you can, just maybe the end of the week or next week's sessions, those don't have as many people registered. That's the only thing that I would ask. But yes, you can sign up for another session. It says, if we, the borough, give them an email address for them to file, do we need to include their name in that email? It's how you set up that email address. So if you're going to give a borough email to that LGO, it's however your email system, whatever your email system requires for that setup. Really, once they get that email address from the borough, will they be able to, utilize that for other things as well too? But again, it's up to your email system and what's required. I believe that's the question you're asking. Is there an email contact for us if questions come up later? Yes, on the live site, I think we will post information once we finalize all the training material and who will be the contact. I believe that will be out on the final live site of who to contact when questions come up. So we're still finalizing some of those details, but that will be available to you as we go forward.
We have I think 7 or 8 staff who've been trained on this system, who once we roll it out, will be answering the phones to help you along. What I have found in working through this myself on the test site is that once I had the ability to go into the system and walk around it, checking it out, I didn't find it very complicated. And I've mentioned before that I find booking an airline flight to be much more complex than having to do this system here. But that doesn't mean that we won't have some issues with some of the old-timers. Like I know there was a concern about somebody that didn't have an email or a computer. But I think for most people that have a computer and do things online, like buy off of Amazon and different things like that, Barnes & Noble, etc., this won't be that crazy.
So, okay. Gail, I got your questions here. I'm not going to publicly talk about them, but I will discuss them with Chris. So, but I did get them, so I just want to let you know that.
Okay, thanks. That's a good point, Gail.
So, okay, so we're done for today. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Again, we're excited. I think Chris and his staff are excited, and I think hopefully, again, there will be some probably bumps in the road. There's going to be some LGOs that probably find this difficult, even though I think most of us, we've gone through a lot of review sessions to make this as seamless and easy as possible. But again, we're dealing with a whole host of different people out there. We hope that you as the clerks and anyone else, entities there don't get bombarded with, tons of questions. I promise to try to make the training video that we create for the LGOs as very intuitive as possible. And, again, step by step, so for them it's very easy that they understand. But again, we can tweak it as we go along. Again, this is the first go-around and first version of the system, so any feedback is definitely appreciated, where we can make this easier. But again, thanks everybody for attending today. And, again, if you have any questions, just, kind of forward them off, and, once we get that contact information, and we'll, be as responsive as we can to get back to you with any questions that you have. Thanks again. Have a great day, and hope to talk to you soon.